Om Shri Sai Ram. Humble prostrations at the divine lotus feet of our beloved Master, Bhagavan Shri Sathya Sai Baba. Gita Vahini, Chapter 5. Detachment from the fruits of action. The person of steady wisdom. Summary. All you must consider is which is more important, a happy life or liberation from the circle of life and death. Happy living is of only a short duration. The joy of liberation is eternal, unshakable. When one has a right to engage in action or karma, one has a right also to the fruit. But doers can, out of their own free will and determination, refuse to be affected by the result, whether favorable or unfavorable. The Gita shows the way. Do, but do not be attached to the consequence. The desire for the result of your action is a sign of passion, rajoguna. To engage in action, to know that the result will follow, and yet not to be attached to it or concerned with it, that is the sign of the quality of purity and serenity, sattva-guna. Krishna has made clear in a general way 4 principal points. The principle of renouncing the fruits of action, or absolute surrender, sharanagati, the Sathya teaching, the yogic attitude of restraint and self-control, and the nature of the person of steady, integral spiritual wisdom, sthita prajna. When Arjuna prayed for Keshava to tell him the true characteristics of a person of steady wisdom, Keshava replied, Partha, such a person will be free from all desire and stable in the knowledge and awareness of the Atma only. There are 2 processes in this. First, to give up all the promptings of desire in the mind is the negative process. And second, to implant the ever-present joy therein, which is the positive aspect. The weeds are pleasures that the senses draw from the objective world. The crop is attachment to God. The mind is a bundle of wishes, and unless these wishes are removed by their roots, there is no hope of destroying the mind. When mind vanishes, one becomes steady in wisdom, sthita prajna. With the conviction that I am the seer only, not the seen, the steady-minded one releases themselves from attachment. By this means, desire is conquered. You must watch the working of the mind from outside it. Do not get involved in it. Bliss is in everyone as part of their very nature. Those with pure consciousness find the highest bliss in the realization of their own reality, the Atma. Joy or grief can be met with in 3 forms. Caused by oneself, which is Adi Atma, caused by the 5 elements or the material world, which is Adi Bhautika, and caused by fate, that is natural disasters, Adi Daivika. Conquest of the senses is essential for spiritual discipline, but that is not all. There is still danger from thoughts and impulses that draw you outward. Desire has no limit, it can never be satisfied. So, along with mastery of the senses, one must also establish mastery of the mind. That is the sign of a person of steady wisdom. If the mind has no attachment to objects, the senses have nothing to cling to. They perish. People have 3 chief instruments, the mind, the intellect, and the senses. When the mind cooperates with the senses, you enter the flux called the objective world or samsara. When it subordinates itself to the intellect, you attain the knowledge of the Atma. One path leads to the surrender to the world, the other, the surrender to God. So when all beings are experiencing night, the person of steady wisdom would keep himself awake. When all beings are awake, the person of steady wisdom would be asleep. In the case of people of steady wisdom, they sleep in body consciousness and wake in the awareness of the Atma. They will not awake, even by mistake, in the sensory world. Key takeaways from this chapter. First, while people shun the consequences of bad actions, most people who do good Expect the positive consequence of that in return in terms of more pleasure, less sorrow, and generally a happier life. But being undesirous of the consequences of one's own good actions also is a sign of the highest wisdom. It happens only when one is in pursuit of liberation alone and is unconcerned whether the drama of his life is happy or sad. Second, to any discriminating mind, when one is in the sea of emotion, whether happiness or sorrow, besides feeling the emotion, one also has a faculty of observing oneself having that emotion. This is a purely human faculty that enables an action or restraint contrary to the emotion of the moment. If we establish ourselves in the identity of the observer of life and not an active participant in it, our life can appear just like a movie we are watching while munching popcorn, sitting amongst the audience. Third, the relationship between the mind and the senses appears like the relationship between the brain and the nerve sensations that we experience. If anesthesia is given, the wound may cut and bleed, but since its connection with the brain has been severed, the person feels no pain and can simply watch the surgeon operating on it with dispassion. This shows that if we control the mind to ignore the senses, its impact and dominance on our lives can be hugely diminished, if not altogether eliminated. Fourth, when the intellect is established in steady wisdom through the control of senses and annihilation of the mind, it will always be awake in consciousness and bliss, though apparently alive in the world. They will remain in this world, but not of this world. End of chapter 5. Jai Sai Ram.